And I wrote this story about a boy who discovered some strange flower or plant in a field. And it actually sounds kind of magical now. Maybe it's like it sounds like it's an allegory, but it wasn't. I was like 9. There was like a shaft of air from Mars to this field on Earth. There was this narrow little shaft that was in some way causing this plant or flower to grow in a particular way. The plausibility of a thing that went like hundreds of millions of miles from the red planet, obviously that makes no sense at all. And how lame is that? That was...
No, I think that's great.
There were no aliens. There was no fighting.
I think it's great.
It's very pastoral.
And then law school crushed the imagination of you.
Yeah, totally.
Law school, just like an iron boot, just stamps on the Martian flower. And I think you should write a memoir called A Martian Flower Blooms on Earth. That should be your...
in Brooklyn.
That's right, exactly.
Martian flower.
Beautiful. Hello there, I'm Paul Giamatti.
And I'm Stephen Asma, and today we welcome Preet Bharara to Chinwag.
An amazing man I got to know personally, a funny man, smart man, and a handsome man. Known for his good looks around the federal government, he's better known as the former U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York.
And he is currently situated as a partner at the law firm Wilmerhale, which sounds kind of like the name of a Scottish castle.
It does.
Yeah, maybe actually, the law firm operates out of a Scottish castle. I don't know.
I'm going to change my name to Bob Wilmerhale. I think that's Chinwag with Bob Wilmerhale. How's that sound?
That's compelling.
It's good, right? That's going to pull people in. Preet recently authored a memoir titled Doing Justice, and he hosts a podcast called Stay Tuned with Preet.
Stay tuned with us to hear us talk with Preet about the new name for UFOs, unspeakable acts performed on chickens, and why the law is like a sonnet. Let us count the ways.
Just brilliant, Professor Shakespeare. Welcome, Preet. Hello, sir.
So I get asked about you from time to time because of this role you play. And you know what I like to tell people?
Oh, yeah.
That when we had dinner and I said, let's order some wine. You're like, yeah, what do you recommend? I don't know anything about wine.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Well, that was...
You were in Sideways.
No, I know. I remember that. And I remember also... Yeah, but I also remember you're not telling the story totally accurately because you said, let's order something to drink. And I said, yeah, I don't think, because I was a little under the weather. I said, I don't think I want to drink. And you were like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Have a drink. And then I was like, okay, sure, we'll order some wine. And I said, I have no idea what kind of wine.
It was Merlot, right?
But it was not, yeah. But I learned something. Like, if I was having a drink with like the guy who played Superman or anybody, like I would understand if they said, I don't fly. But with you, I'm like, that's a mortal. Like, how are you not a super expert?
That's interesting.
Like, it wouldn't have occurred to me after you played multiple seasons in Billions that you could try a case, right? Like, it wouldn't. But something about the fact, I was a little bit disappointed in you.
That's interesting.
I was disappointed.
That's interesting.
Because maybe it's because you were so credible as a wine expert.
But that's interesting. That's interesting to me. It really is, because it's like that in particular. Why that in particular? And not that I could, because we know that an actor hasn't gone to law school. We know that an actor doesn't know how to box or whatever, actually.
Yeah.
But it's plausible that this guy would know a lot about wine.
Yeah. And you kind of sold, like, I haven't had a Merlot since that movie.
Well, it was a big disaster.
Didn't the sales drop off or something after that?
They did. That's my favorite fact.
Catastrophically, they dropped off.
I didn't really take any notes. I didn't brainstorm much. But the one word I have on my little sheet that I thought would be interesting to talk about, and Stephen, you read my mind because there's some connection we have. Vengeance, because I was watching Bill Maher, as I sometimes do, and he ended his program, and it just made me think, with addressing the issue of guns and saying, whether you're liberal or a conservative, you have to acknowledge, I don't know that I agree with this, but you have to acknowledge that movies play some role, and there are some people whose minds are function in such a way that they are enticed to commit acts of violence. I like violent movies. I never killed anybody that I would certainly admit to you in this program. But he talks about, and he has this like montage of movie titles that have the word vengeance in them, and how much vengeance sells, and how much, you know, the plots of some of the great movies that people are addicted to, including Kill Bill and others.
Yeah.
And I started thinking about that because I'm a guy, I love those movies. And my entire career has been about rule of law, not just vigilantism and vengeance. And yet I love me a vengeance movie. What's going on there?
That's your old brain. That's your reptile brain coming in.
A reptile brain.
That's why Tarantino's movies, I know they're artistically great, but I can't enjoy them because they're all revenge fantasies. They're all sort of revised history where, you know.
So you're more evolved than I am. So you have outgrown your reptilian DNA?
No, I still enjoy it, but I feel like you can't hit the same note over and over again. And it's harder to make more emotionally complicated stories. And vengeance, I think, is just it's the low-hanging fruit, I think.
You know what I keep thinking as we're talking about this? What the animation of this particular segment is going to look like.
Dude.
Like I would
hopefully, yeah.
Make me an alligator.
Yeah, whatever you want, man.
Oh, definitely, dude. We'll make you anything you want to be, man.
Not like a gecko.
But here, watch what I'm about to do. Since we're talking about reptilian brains, can we talk about reptile people coming down from UFOs, the reptilian people that run this country?
They're not called that anymore.
They're not. They're called UAPs.
What does that stand for?
Unidentified aerial phenomenon. And that's what they call them.
That's not an important.
I know. That's my question, too. Why did they change it? This is the thing. I watched those hearings. Did you watch those hearings?
No, but I read about them. I didn't watch it because I knew you would summarize them for me.
No, they didn't really talk about much. But what was great to me was watching guys like Adam Schiff and Marco Rubio talking about like glowing red orbs and stuff like that. And I was like, it's amazing, though, to hear those guys talking about this stuff.
Well, do you believe that I am perfectly prepared to believe
that there are things like that?
Yes. Because I don't know, there's crazier shit. Have you seen some of the things that live at the bottom of the ocean? I mean, I don't know.
True.
No, that's exactly right, though. Because it's like,
you know what's crazier than a UFO? That an insect becomes a butterfly. I mean, I don't know. There's crazy stuff.
Yeah,
there are birds that could imitate this conversation. I find that to be incredibly crazy.
Actually, almost crazier in a weird way. Yeah. That stuff can happen. No, and the fact of the matter is it's not like they're saying it's necessarily aliens. It's just something they don't know about is flying around up there. And so that's what, you know, and it's like, that's all it really is. That's all it really amounts to.
Can I ask you the globally important question?
Please.
If we did have a threat from aliens, would the world band together, or would we react like we reacted to COVID?
Right. Or would it be like indifferently, like we wouldn't care?
No. I mean, I guess I didn't see that film that everybody saw that some people liked, some people didn't like. Don't Look Up.
Yeah, I didn't see that.
Which is the allegory of how
climate change.
We would deal with climate change, but analogizing it to how we would deal with an asteroid.
Yeah.
Do we become tribal?
Is that what happens? People become tribal in that movie? Or they?
I haven't seen it, so maybe we should.
No, but I think actually the point of that movie is that people are indifferent to it, which is what I feel like.
Oh, yeah, no, that's different. Yeah, that's different.
Yeah, which is actually what I feel like is happening with this now, is that actually the shocking thing to me is nobody seems to give a shit at all, which is kind of.
UAPs?
Yeah, nobody seems to care. I mean, literally guys like Adam Schiff, and you probably know him. Do you know him?
I do.
And
he's a pretty serious guy.
And that's the thing. You think he's sitting there being serious about this. Right?
He's not cracking the jokes on a regular basis.
No, so he's not a funny guy like you, really. He doesn't seem like.
I don't mean he's not funny, and I don't want him to see this, but he's a very earnest member of the Congress.
So that's what I mean. A guy like that is sitting there saying that he believes in this stuff, and nobody cares, and then people are completely indifferent to it, which it was kind of amazing to me. That it's like that. This is kind of shocking. I mean, literally people are sitting there saying they're admitting that there's stuff
explanation.
There's no explanation.
So I'm deeply interested in it. I have been since I was a kid.
And UFOs.
Yeah, I read a lot of science fiction. Like my diet of reading was science fiction when I was growing up. But what stymies me is like there's not much more I can like. I guess I could watch a hearing, and I could hear what evidence there is, but it's limited.
Yeah.
Like I think you can digest. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't know if everything that's known and that's interesting about UFOs or UAPs, whatever they're called, could even fill a New Yorker article. Well, I think like we have no explanation, and then now what? Then okay, let's have a beer. Like then what?
Well, how about this though? Like I used to be very skeptical and think this stuff is it's Roswell, it's wishful thinking. There's nothing to it.
Yeah.
But then like this recent data that's come through the Navy and now NASA's getting involved, and there's like new footage that pilots have seen, and they released this in 2022, like this 1,500-page report, and they've shown some of this stuff, and it looks like whatever it is, like the propulsion is so much weirder than anything we've seen before.
Yeah.
So the question is like, is this putting it on a new footing, like the whole question, or is this just Roswell all over again?
Is it the same shit?
Well, my view is like everything that has momentum in life in a story, if there's no further development, if there's no, new take, new experiment, then because you got to feed the beast. People need more.
But do you think it's not? You think it's not worth looking into?
No. I think it's no. I would like the people who are capable of looking into it and who are smart to figure it out.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
and tell me so I can freak out about it. Yes, I would like to know.
Is it too speculative for serious thought? Like, because you're sort of suggesting, well, wait till the experts weigh in on this. But then the problem with some of this shit is it's so weird that either experts aren't drawn to it, like scientists won't touch this with a 10-foot pole, or the other theory is that the government is covering it up.
Yeah, that they're hiding shit.
Yeah. So I don't subscribe to this conspiracy. So look, to me,
you don't think that but why are they?
No, because everything leaks.
Okay.
There's a secret, like in my experience.
Right.
Like you can't keep anything secret in this country. We once had a terrorist, the guy who tried to blow up Times Square, when it was in nobody's interest to leak his whereabouts. And as the FBI descended around the apartment that we thought he was in Connecticut, this is back in 2010, there was like news trucks were pulling up. Like, who the fuck told them about that? Like the idea that something that sensational could actually be kept secret is crazy to me. But as you're speaking, it makes me think of another thing. Maybe we can
sort of anything you want to talk about.
Taxonomize this a little bit. There are different kinds of mysteries, right? I'll give you two examples. One mystery, when I was growing up, nobody knew the answer to it. And now there's a pretty solidly accepted consensus, like what killed, like I believe when I was like 10 years old, nobody really knew for sure what killed the dinosaurs. 43 years ago. And that was something that at the time, like, I don't know, it's a speculation. There's no Google. We don't have, we have a time machine. But scientists dutifully, while I was like, listening to heavy metal,
really
going to college. Oh yeah, totally. Def Leppard. That was my bag.
Def Leppard. Really? That was your.
Yeah, and but also Black Sabbath and whatever Jersey boys listen to. Yes,
to me, Def Leppard's not really.
I know, but it was at the time.
Hair metal. That's hair metal.
Yeah, I mean, I like the real metal stuff too. So that's something that would not have been was not that interesting to talk about, in my view, in 1978, because I'm not capable of analyzing it. But over time, we now have a pretty good theory about it. I'll give you another example that I still don't think we've solved. I still don't think we understand how the fuck they built the pyramids.
No, we don't.
And we can talk about that for a few minutes. But then I kind of, we went and saw Stonehenge a couple of years ago. It was not quite the pyramids. And the guy's talking about how big the rocks are. And he's like, well, here's some speculation. They didn't have pulleys. And at the end of that, I'm like, there's nothing more to say. It's like, we don't know. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, when you figure it out, let me know. Yeah. And we can have an interesting conversation.
But you're drawn.
That's how I feel about UFOs.
But as a man who deploys the law in things, you are drawn to crime. A crime must be solved.
Solvable problems.
Solvable things. It's what I think my buddy was saying. He was saying, look, there are things we can solve or try to solve in this world. Why are you bothering with trying to solve that other shit? Like, what's the point to doing that?
Well, I'll tell you why. Because the consequence of a particular explanation of that event is radically sensational and cosmic. Like, if it turns out, let's say 90% it's an optical illusion, or it's, Ecuador has a secret space program that we don't know about, which would be weird because no offense to Ecuador. But if it turns out that these are things from another planet, well, that's earth-shattering. I mean, earth-shattering. It's universe-shattering stuff, because the consequence of a particular answer to the question would alter our understanding
of everything,
of the universe forever. That's what. Tell your friend he should spend more time paying attention to the UAP.
Well, I wonder if he does now. I mean, it's been many years.
He has changed. You said, Paul, we were talking about this the other day, and you said it's not, if it's supposed to be a distraction technique by the government while other shit happens, it's not working because people are
not working.
Well, yesterday, my 80-year-old mother came to me and said, my friend, who's also an 80-year-old woman, sent me a video of a UFO outside her backyard in the Upper Peninsula, in Michigan. So apparently it is seeping out into.
So it's clearly, it is, which is interesting. I don't know. I mean, I wonder.
We were kids. I think we're all around in the same.
We are pretty much
neighborhood. Yeah. When I was a kid, we talked about UFOs all the time.
Yeah.
And that's when Close Encounters with the Third Kind.
All of that stuff.
I remember constantly talking about UFOs. When I was a kid.
Well, that's interesting too, because it's like, is that because there was, I mean, everybody says the 70s was this age of paranoia with Watergate and all that kind of stuff. Was it something, I'm serious.
I don't know. I haven't thought about it.
Because then all of a sudden it's not in the zeitgeist. Yeah. It's not so much in the zeitgeist in the same way anymore. People don't talk about it in the same way anymore.
But there were these other mysteries we talked about, some of which I must be, like, I remember when I was a kid, we talked about the Loch Ness Monster.
Sure.
Leonard Nimoy.
Bigfoot.
Yeah. Sure.
And UFOs.
Absolutely.
My kids don't talk about that stuff.
No. And why is it not the same? But that's interesting to me.
Because they have evolved. In one generation.
Is it? Do you think it's
many leaps and bounds?
Genuinely. Do you think it's because they're smarter and they don't buy that bullshit? What do you think, Stephen?
I've not thought about it until this moment, but I have never heard them gossip about crazy shit like that. But we were obsessed with that stuff, and Pop Rocks, also Pop Rocks.
Well, also if you had Pop Rocks in your mouth and you drank a 7-Up, your head would blow off. but this is interesting.
This is clearly going to be a show for boomers.
We'll be right back. I've always wanted to say that. No, listen, this is interesting, because I was saying to somebody the other day, I was saying to my kid, in the 70s, we were obsessed with I remember being obsessed with dogs having rabies. We were always fucking talking about rabies. You're going to get bitten by a rabid dog. Now, am I imagining that?
The action was like, I never had rabies. Do you ever have rabies, any of you?
I haven't actually had rabies.
The thing that was crazy to me was they would say you have to get 25 shots in your stomach.
In the stomach.
And I couldn't, there was no Google, so I don't know if that was true or not, but I believe that.
I think it is true. I think you have to get a whole program of shots right in the fucking abdomen if you get bitten by a rabid dog. But I just remember...
I was skinny then. That would have been more painful. Now that I have a dad bod, it would be less.
I think these things have they had the conduit of information was very... It's the monoculture. We all watched the same shows. We heard the same radio shows. Now the kids have 1,001. They're getting memes constantly, and they believe really wacky shit, but it's not... There's no demographic.
It's a different kind of wacky shit.
You know what else my kids don't do that I did? That proves the point they don't collect stamps.
I was just thinking this. That's so fucking weird that you say that. Wait a minute. I collected
postage stamps.
Wait a second.
What kind of intelligent people do that?
You're blowing my fucking mind. Wait a minute. I'm on Instagram. I'm incognito. I don't want anybody to know who the fuck I am. But the other day I was like, you know what? I'm going to go see if there's any philately guys. Philately. If there's any philatelists.
Right. Does that mean having sex?
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? There's a whole fucking universe of guys who are still out there fucking collecting stamps. They're out there still. But why the fuck?
They're not the average person.
No, they're definitely
like the average kid.
Right.
Not young.
Right.
You'd have an iPhone, you'd find a matchbook, and on the back of the matchbook would be and there's no internet. You didn't go to like a www, you didn't go to a URL. Yeah. I would write a letter to some company.
Yeah.
With a check for like $4.
Yes.
And then I would get stamps.
350 stamps from Brunei. in Burundi.
Yeah.
What you're saying is without the internet, it was more like an oral culture. It was more like word of mouth was how things happen. And you would literally get, so stamps were in your face because you got letters all the time and stuff like that. But I don't think people have the same, like the urban legend kind of thing of like, oh, you know, the guy with the hooked hand is in the back of my car and his hooked hand is hanging off the door of the car.
But people could believe crazy shit back then. And what it sounds like you're saying is one thesis would be, well, today that doesn't fly because you can just Google it. However, in the age of Google, as we speak, we have fellow citizens standing in a field waiting for JFK Jr. to reappear and run as the running mate to Donald Trump. Yeah. They have Google. You can Google that.
And actually, Google's the problem in this instance. Actually, then Google becomes. It's like there's two. There wasn't enough information at one time. Now there's too much.
Well, I don't want to get all enlightenment on you guys, but that's what Hume says. David Hume says,
yes,
a little bit.
Is any relation to Brit Hume?
Much better. Hume says like a little bit of skepticism is good, but then too much skepticism turns you towards conspiracy theories. And he says this in the 1740s.
Oh, so really?
Yeah, it's interesting. He says, and you apply it now to people who believe that lizards are flying the UFOs or whatever. Is there a sense in which, like, this is the new folklore? Because I know Jacques Vallée is this guy, and even Carl Jung thought, well, UFOs, it's kind of a folklore thing.
Yeah.
It's tied to these older traditions.
And it is, I think it is
harmless. It's harmless, though, right?
I think it is a little bit harmless.
The UFO is harmless.
It is until everybody's waiting in a field for, by the way, it's not JFK Jr. this time. It's JFK. It's just JFK.
It would be 105.
I used to think conspiracies, they were fun. That was just funny and kind of fun, and it's not harmful. But I mean, now people are it's ruining people's lives who believe in it and who don't believe in it, and it's causing people to do crazy things. And so it's like now
there's too much information, right? There's too.
That's what I think.
But I mean, how is it really ruining their lives? Because like if you talk to the guy who designed the Creation Museum, I interviewed this guy, Ken Ham. We would write this guy off as a kook, but in his world, his beliefs are getting him like all kinds of adulation and social status and dates. And
so it's for him, it's like it is enhancing his life among the circle of people that he deals with.
There's someone there's someone for everyone, right? And if you're bold and you have a big personality and you're convincing about it and you own it, there's some subset of people who will go for
but now it's easy to find those.
Like cannibalism. They're a cannibal.
Yeah.
I used to. There's a phrase, and I keep meaning to look up where it is from, and I swear I think I found it in a Vonnegut novel many years ago. And when someone is alarmed and shocked by some weird human behavior, like my mom would be. I remember one time my mom, who's a very sweet, super caring person, she got very upset when she heard about violence of a mother towards their children. There's that crazy case where a mother, drowned her kids.
Right.
It's like, I don't believe that could happen. Like she almost like thought that was fake news. And I didn't say to my mother, because I don't talk like this in my house when I was a younger person. But there are people who fuck chickens.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's a profound statement. In a world in which there are, and this is true.
Yeah.
In a world in which there are people, so every time someone says it's crazy, why would you do this? I always want to respond, there are people
who fuck chickens. Chicken fuckers. You're absolutely right. But what's interesting is at one time, if you fucked chickens, you were on your own, and you probably didn't know a lot of other people that fuck chickens.
Yeah.
You were fucking the chicken.
Now you were
the only guy fucking the chicken. As far as you knew, and then you lived with the shame, you lived with all the problems of fucking chickens. Now, if you fuck chickens, you can have there's an organization for you, and you're going to be able to stand up and say, I fuck chickens, and then here's all my buddies, and we all fuck chickens.
Don't shame for it.
I think I got this
which is interesting, because I think that is good. Like you're saying, Stephen, that is good for people who fuck chickens. That's great. We all fuck chickens. I just want to say fuck chickens as many times as possible. That's all that I want to do. But we all fuck chickens, and that's great. Now we all have a community. But then on the other hand, it's like we all have a community, and we all want to blow shit up and kill people, then it's not good.
Are people stupider than they used to be, or are they just as stupid, but they all have a platform now?
If you have
I wonder about that.
Just as ideological as they used to be, my students, because I teach a lot of people that are like 20 years old, and every semester I meet the new generation, or every few years the new group, and they think they're much smarter. They think they have a high degree of scientific literacy. And I think the media reports them as being very scientifically literate because they know about climate change. Mm-hmm. But if you push on it just a little bit, you'll realize that it's just very thin stuff. And they are willing to believe in almost anything. If you just cue it, you just tee it up.
So you're talking about people who are in college.
Yeah.
And there's this great debate in this country about forgiving student debt. And I had, a fellow philosopher who I studied with in college, Michael Sandel, on my podcast a couple of times. And I took that famous class called Justice with him years ago. And even though he's an elite person, however you define that term, and is a tenured professor at Harvard University, he talks about the valorization of college. And most people in America don't go to college. Most people in the world don't go to college. And most people in America don't go to college. So there's emphasis we place, and Paul went to, some fancy college too.
Take it easy. So did you. You said take it easy. So did you.
You went to the other, one of the other ones.
All right, steady
on.
But we spent all this time talking about college. Are those people less susceptible to conspiracy theories or not? I've never seen any studies on this.
The college educated or not? Are they any more so?
Yeah. But like the biggest gap between Trump,
right? I
think maybe other than black voters, the biggest gap between a Biden voter and a Trump voter, or a Trump voter and a Hillary voter, is college or not.
College education. So are they less susceptible to a certain kind of conspiratorial thinking? Probably yes. But, I
don't know. Is that true?
I don't know. I think that's right. A certain style of conspiratorial thinking they're going to be opposed to, but it's not because their rationality is better or their scientific literacy is better. I think it aligns along political, ideological, fault lines.
That's what you're willing to believe somehow. Because the educated, Trumpy conspiracy guys, do they not really believe that shit, or do they actually believe it? Is it cynical that they're
I think it's both. I think there are two categories. I think there are people who do.
Some of those guys, some of the kind of highly
guys
educated.
In the field waiting for one of the Kennedys.
Yes.
Pick a Kennedy. Right.
It's going to be Edward. He's going to be the one who shows up. Teddy Kennedy's going to be the one who shows up. And they're all going to be like, you got to be kidding me. Teddy Kennedy.
Not that one. Wasn't there a band? It's just coming.
The Dead Kennedys.
The Dead Kennedys.
Yeah, the Dead Kennedys.
Did that start this whole thing?
Oh, that's interesting. I wonder what they have to say about this. I know that guy's a very outspoken.
I don't think the conservatives listen to the Dead Kennedys, but I could be wrong.
You could be wrong. Yeah. You never know. Sorry, but it's two categories you were saying.
Oh, no, so I think there are people who believe crazy shit, like the people who think that Hillary Clinton is running, a child rape ring.
Yeah.
And then there are other people, some of whom are famous senators, who absolutely know better. And they just say the dumbest shit that you can imagine.
Yeah.
Because they know it works. One thing I've been thinking about lately is forget about conspiracy theories, but just pure statements of argumentation that are just not logical at all. Like look at COVID, for example, right? Mm-hmm. How many people respond on social media when someone like me or someone else who had gotten all the vaccinations gets COVID, and all these people respond, well, it turns out that the vaccine was useless. Well, it fucking wasn't useless. It wasn't useless at all. I'm alive. I go to the hospital. And like a gigantic percentage of people who had the vaccine and got COVID didn't go to the hospital, in the same way that you can still die in a car if you wear a seatbelt, but most people wear seatbelts, do fine.
Don't die. Yeah.
That's not even ideological. That's just basic fucking 1 + 1 = 2.
Yeah, well,
people get away with it. And it used to be that stupid, unpowerful people would make those arguments in a bar somewhere. And now they're statewide elected officials.
Friends, now a message from our sponsor.
I was wondering, because Preet, you spend a lot of time, as a lawyer dealing with issues of reasonable doubt and things like this. And it's what you just brought up now, which is, are there any lessons you learned? Because I think when you really are arguing cases, like philosophy and the law, there's a lot of parallel because of the argumentation. And a lot of times you see, well, rationality is not the clean slam dunk that we're told it is. It's messy and all fucked up. And I'm just wondering, do you have any lessons from your experience in the law when you apply it to paranormal things like UFOs and other conspiracy things, where it's not clear that it's not a clearly open and shut math 2 + 2 = 4 thing?
Look, there are 3 possible outcomes in a trial, right? There's a determination of liability or guilt in a criminal trial. The determination of no liability or an acquittal, not guilty, in a criminal trial. And the third possibility is a hung jury, like people just can't agree and decide. And I think if you use the analogy of a courtroom, there's some things about which there's just not certainty. For a while, that was true about how the dinosaurs died. For some time, that was probably true about climate change. Those things now, to continue the analogy, to a civil trial, I think the preponderance of evidence, more than a preponderance, mere preponderance is 51%, is that there is a consensus explanation for those things, but the UFOs remain in that, I think, evasive category of who knows? Who knows? But what I don't like is, people who dismiss those things because they think it's in the same category of like Kennedy coming back to life.
Yeah.
It's not that. It's a different category of thing. And I'll tell you another thing, maybe it is, which is not necessarily rational. There's a little bit of a hopefulness. So long as they're not malicious, it would be actually, it would make my day if there was some consensus proof that motherfucker came from another system.
That those, oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And I kind of want that to be, as long as they're not like drones that are doing advanced, advanced work to try to kill us all. But how great would that be?
It would be amazing, as long as they're not, as you say. It would be. Hopefully, it would be a paradigm shift. Shit would change like profoundly.
Can I mention a Hollywood conspiracy theory? And I think Stephen alluded to this earlier.
Sure.
Why is it the case? And I haven't done a complete survey, but I've been noticing this. Why are the aliens always reptilian?
Well, now they are. That's what's interesting, is they didn't used to be.
What did they used to be?
They used to, first they were little green men, then they were the little gray guys. No, but then they were the gray guys with the crazy almond-shaped eyes. They were the
to me, that's crazier than,
a reptile guy? That's crazier than...
It makes no sense to me. What was I watching recently? Like there's District 9, and then there's that thing, the quiet, like the...
A quiet place or whatever?
Quiet place. They don't have they don't have opposable thumbs. Yeah. It just seems weird. They're so awkward.
Oh, those little gray guys had no opposable thumbs?
Gray guy. I just feel like in a lot of these movies,
they don't make sense.
They don't have dicks. They don't make, like, why would that be the way that you evolve?
Well, but that's the thing. What I was going to say is it's different now, and it changes.
Yeah.
It changes. So it's like, it's clearly, it's determined by... It's called, well, it could be. Who the fuck knows what it's going to be next? Because it does change as people's brains are changing and as the perception of thing is changing. For some reason, a lizard guy makes more sense now than a fucking little gray guy with weird shaped eyes.
Also, I'm sorry, Paul, but I think now also astrobiologists are looking at octopuses and saying that shit, those things are so radically different in terms of their body plan. They don't have digits. They're not quadrupeds. But now we know they're so smart. They actually be a better model for
what an alien could actually be like.
Yeah, so
but I'm always like, but this is like the thing I was saying to you, Stephen. Sorry, about like artificial intelligence. Like, we don't even know what the hell when artificial intelligence really starts becoming its own conscious entity. We don't even know what the fuck that's going to look like. And I kind of feel like, aliens could be here already. We just don't even know what the fuck they look like. They could just be something we can't even identify. Those fucking ships themselves could be the aliens themselves. It's like, who the fuck knows? It's going to be something we don't even know what the hell it is. I would like that. I would like it to be something we can't even fucking tell what it is. Because that'll really fuck
like it to be, because it would Because I would like to see that covered on cable news instead of the latest fucking Trump thing.
So would I.
Man.
It's something larger than our mundane shit that we deal with every day. Since I was a kid. Look, like, I think it's true still that the greatest consumers of science fiction are kids.
Yeah.
Obviously, many adults as well. But I stopped reading science fiction because I just stopped.
Did you?
I read every Isaac Asimov story and book.
The best. So good.
Subscribe. I had like subscriptions to science fiction.
Do you remember Omni magazine? Do you remember Omni?
I remember Omni, and there's also something called Analog. It was weird.
Yeah, no, I remember it.
It should have been called Digital.
Like, what is that they're going to call it?
Analog.
That's true, actually. I never thought.
But I think it's also like, if you believe in this idea, maybe, Stephen, this is like a myth that we have. Children have more imagination and more sense of wonder and like to believe that these things are possible. I mean, I loved thinking about alternative dimensions and time travel and all this. And then you stop, you become an adult. Mm-hmm. And then you think about the rule against perpetuities in law school, and it kills you. This whole conversation is upsetting me very much.
It kills you inside? You're dead inside? Is that what you die inside?
I didn't know how much. I actually died during this conversation.
That's what I'm here for. That's what I'm hoping this show will be. It'll be soul-crushing and life-destroying for people who tune in. Is that I'm really hoping that that's what it will be. I love to hear that you were a science fiction reader and that you were listening to heavy metal. It doesn't surprise me.
I was a science fiction writer.
Surprise me.
But I was so bad at science that my stories made no scientific sense.
I think too. You actually wrote science fiction?
I wrote short stories when I was a kid.
Do you still have any of these stories?
I don't.
Oh,
my parents may have them. You're not getting them. I don't know. I see where you're going with this.
Really? You're not going to just hand me the shit that you wrote?
I remember one of the plots.
Uh-huh.
Because science fiction can be fantastical.
Yeah.
But it has to have some like reasonable basis, even if fantastical.
Yeah.
And I wrote this story about a boy who discovers some strange flower or plant in a field that's unlike any other flower or plant. And it actually sounds kind of magical now. Maybe it's like it sounds like it's an allegory, but it wasn't. I was like 9. And the reason why the plant was different was there was like a shaft of air from Mars to this field on Earth. There was this narrow little shaft that was in some way causing this plant or flower to grow in a particular way. Now,
so a Martian.
The plausibility of a thing that went like hundreds of millions of miles from the red planet, obviously that makes no sense at all, which is why it was never published, I dare say.
So it's a Martian flower blooms on Earth.
Yeah, and how lame is that? That was.
No, I think that's great.
There were no aliens. There was no fighting.
I think it's great.
It's very pastoral.
And then law school crushed the imagination of you.
Yeah, totally.
Law school, just like an iron boot, just stamps on the Martian flower. And I think you should write a memoir called "A Martian Flower Blooms on Earth." That should be your.
in Brooklyn.
That's right. Exactly.
Martian flower.
Beautiful. Wow. Well,
I think you should, Stephen. I don't know if you work with lawyers. I think there's a role for greater imagination.
Yeah,
in legal practice, and you probably make some dough.
It's hard to think. I mean, I know that the general tendency is to find sentencing guidelines or rules, but I know that there's a lot of judgment that happens in the law that's in this other domain. It's not the application of a general law or a principle or a rule. It's more like what the Greeks called phronesis, like practical wisdom. Like you get a sense of it, and then you push it in that direction or whatever. But it's hard to I don't know how you can't codify that into a system that could be spread across, a nation state or something.
That was very profound.
I know.
No, I think that's all right. But, I think even so people make the following point about creativity, right? If you have no rules at all, and a poem can take any form, and rhyme or not rhyme, be an iambic pentameter or not, it's very hard, according to some people, to be creative. If you impose some rules and you say, It has to be a sonnet with this particular rhyming scheme or a limerick. Within certain bounds, it's easier to be creative because you have to figure out how to be creative within those bounds. Does that make any sense?
Totally.
A long time ago.
Like a script for Paul, right?
Yeah, right. Like because improvising's harder for me than like to not have those guardrails is harder for me. But isn't the law all about just being boundaries? I mean, it's not.
Yes, but I view the law. I'm just making this up, but I hope it's really fucking profound. The law is like a sonnet.
Oh boy, that's another the second volume of the memoir.
The law is like a sonnet. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day?
Yeah.
The law is like a sonnet insofar as there are these parameters, right? You have to follow a certain rhyming scheme and a certain number of lines and a certain number of syllables. But within that, you have the ability to be very creative, right?
Uh-huh.
So you have the RICO statute. That's your sonnet. But can you use it to go after business people, not just the mafia? Can you use the Ku Klux Klan Act that was meant to go after the Ku Klux Klan and use it to file a lawsuit?
Yeah, that's creative.
Members of Congress,
right,
related to the insurrection.
Yeah,
but you can't have a system of law where it's like, I decree that thee pay me your bride. Like you can't make stuff up.
If you were wearing green underwear, that's it. It's like, but and then what happens too is that you can actually change the shape of the law by doing this stuff too, right? I mean, you can get new precedents set up and you can begin to move the boundaries around, and that's like a creative act, I guess.
Yeah, 100%. And you can also be creative in how you make the argument in court. I write this in my book. Like one of my favorite closing arguments was we brought a case against the State Assembly Speaker, Sheldon Silver, who was a corrupt guy who's now passed.
Did he pass on? I didn't even know that. I remember.
Don't act like you're sad about that.
I wasn't acting sad.
He's a corrupt guy.
You couldn't read my affect.
Justice for a long period of time. I don't mention,
Okay.
And then we also charged the majority leader of the state Senate, who was a Republican, Dean Skelos. And the prosecutor came to me when we were vetting the summation, and one of the defenses was, well, he never really explicitly asked for the job for his kid, right? He would have a meeting with donors, and then suddenly his kid would have a no-show job, right? So that was the quid pro quo. I'll do this thing for you. I'll pass this legislation you like, and make sure that my boy gets a job. And to respond to that argument, which was making some headway, he brings in a Shel Silverstein book of poems. And he's like, I'm going to quote from this poem. And I look at him, I'm like, we don't do fucking poetry. You're a federal prosecutor. What are you talking about poetry? Fucking loser. So he shows it to me, the quote, and it's called, I wish I had it in front of me, and it's called The Gorilla. And it's a poem, it's a great poem by Shel Silverstein, in which a young kid describes how he got a pet gorilla. And he goes to school, and suddenly he's got a pet gorilla. He's getting A's in school. The bullies stop bullying him.
Uh-huh.
Some of the kids are they're giving him his lunch. He never asked for any of that. It's like, it's so weird. I bring my gorilla to school and I'm getting A's and everyone's nice to me and whatever. And you kind of see where, and he says, ladies and gentlemen, Dean Skelos's political power.
It's genius.
Was the gorilla.
Wow.
That's the gorilla, right? He didn't have to ask. He had a meeting with his donors and he said, yeah, I'll do this stuff for you. Oh, by the way, my son's looking for a job. He didn't say, give my son a job. My son's looking for a job. That's the gorilla, which is brilliant.
That's brilliant. That's
the point of that is like, that he was using this. He was using the law as a sonnet.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Most people don't make arguments like that because they're too boring.
They're too worried that it's going to look. I mean, you don't want to come off as hot dogging either, do you? I mean,
it's all in the execution, right? It's like anything. Like it's a little bit like your business.
Yes.
I'm always fascinated, and this is something that I always wonder about too, is how much do any of those guys, do they take acting classes ever? Do the lawyers ever do that? Do they try to get people? I mean, there must be people who come in and help lawyers be more expert in presenting and presenting themselves.
I think some do. I hired, in my time, I hired 2 child actors, people who had been actors and went to law school and stopped acting, who were quite good. And I'm sure that was part of the reason.
Really?
Yeah.
That's classic. And they were better at it.
I think they were, because they know how to connect.
But then you worry about being too slick And then
you can't be too slick.
And you don't want to be F. Lee Bailey, and then you become too slick. You know what I mean? Because then you
got to be yourself.
Yeah,
not something that actors ever get told, right? It's a weird.
Yes, but you do get told that actually more increasingly as actors. Just
how do you dial it down, Paul? Like, if does somebody say to you, "You're too slick"? How do you?
No, I mean that's so. But I did have a guy one time. I came in for a thing. I'd been hired for a job. I came in with a whole thing. I was playing. It was a period movie. I was playing a character, and I came in and I was doing this stuff. And the guy was like, just be yourself. And I was like, what the fuck is that supposed to mean? It's actually the worst thing you can say to an actor, to a lot of actors, because you're like, I'm an actor because I don't want to be myself, asshole. And it's also like, I don't know what that means either.
The only person who gets told that is Christopher Walken. Just do that thing.
I don't think he needs to. I had a guy say to me one time, just do more of that Paul Giamatti stuff. I was like, I don't know what the fuck that means. Like, what does that mean exactly?
But you were very versatile. Like, I guess
I hope so.
Non-versatile actors, maybe it's like I guess. Elvis probably was told be yourself.
Yeah, but there's some core sense of who you are, I think. There is something
that's right. And I think that's right. And I think that, and essentially they're saying, like, don't go too far afield and do something. I mean, there's some actors who can. I mean, Daniel Day-Lewis can really transform, and he's allowed, but also he's been smart about the way he's created a kind of mystique around himself and stuff like that. But he's allowed to transform more than some people. The audience won't accept it sometimes if it's too much and stuff. And
can I ask you a question?
Yeah, sure.
We can end any time.
I don't want to waste it. I don't want to waste any more of your time, Preet.
I think my mom would enjoy the show, but she's not allowed to see it because of the chicken fucking thing.
Good. I'm really happy. It's insights into you that I didn't expect to get, and I'm really happy to have gotten them.
All right. On that note,
all right.
See you, folks. Okay.
See you around. Thanks, man.
Bye.
Bye.
Ciao.
Thanks for joining us on Chinwag. And of course, if you like what we're doing, and even if you don't, especially if you don't, I like a little lively debate. I'd like to get into it with you people. How about you write to us? Because we'd love to hear from you. Post all your burning questions in the comments.
If you have a topic you want us to cover and it's strange enough, then maybe we'll talk about it here on this very podcast.
And please make sure you rate us and leave a review, and then share us with your friends. Why not? Ha 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 ha!
Chinwag is a production of Treefort Media and Touchy Feely Films, hosted and executive produced by Paul Giamatti and Stephen Asma. Executive producers for Treefort are Kelly Garner and Lisa Ammerman. Dan Carey is executive producer for Touchy Feely. Our series producer is Rachel Whitley Bernstein. Our associate producer is Andrew Miller. Original theme music by Luke Topp, with additional music by Via Mardot. Oscar Guido is our executive in charge of production. Tom Monahan is head of audio for Treefort. Animation created by Alex Sokol. Audio production, supervision, and editing by Maxwell Carney. Additional audio assistance and mixing by Jeff Neal. Video editing by Brian Barczewski, with additional production management from Renee Levesque. Lastly, for more information, go to chinwagpod.fm and find us on Instagram or TikTok at chinwagpod or on Twitter at chinwag_pod.